My name is Ryan Calloway, and I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened at that dinner table in March. I'm not an angry person. I've never been the kind of guy who holds grudges. I was raised in a small house in Dayton, Ohio, with a cracked driveway and a basketball hoop that leaned about 15 degrees to the left. We weren't rich. We weren't poor. We were exactly the kind of family that looks perfectly normal from the outside. 2 parents, 2 kids, a dog named Chester. And from the outside, that's all anyone ever saw. But I grew up inside that house. And inside that house was a different story entirely. My sister's name is Madison. Maddie, my parents called her. Always Maddie. She is 2 years older than me, and from the moment I was old enough to understand what attention was, I understood that she got all of it. Not some of it, not most of it. All of it. My father, Greg Calloway, worked in insurance. He wore the same blue tie every single Friday because he said it was lucky. He coached Maddie's soccer team when she was 9. He drove her to every tournament, every practice, every awards banquet. He framed her participation trophies on the wall of his home office like they were gold medals. He never once came to a single one of my track meets. Not one. My mother, Linda Calloway, was a school librarian. She smelled like coffee and paperback books, and when she hugged Maddie, she would close her eyes and sway a little, like she was holding something sacred. When she hugged me, on the rare occasions that she did, it felt like she was completing a task on a checklist. I don't say this to make you feel sorry for me. I say it because you need to understand the soil I grew up in before you can understand what grew out of it. By the time I was 17, I had learned to be invisible. I studied hard, not because anyone pushed me to, but because the library was the one place in my house where no one bothered me. I ran track because I was fast and because when I was running, I didn't have to think about being Ryan Calloway, the one nobody talked about. Maddie, meanwhile, floated through life on a current of praise. She went to Ohio State on a partial scholarship that my parents topped off with money from their savings. She got a business degree. She married a guy named Derek who sold luxury cars in Columbus. They bought a nice house. My parents went to their housewarming party and cried happy tears. When I got into the University of Michigan on a full academic scholarship, my mother said, and I quote, "Well, that works out since we don't have much left in savings anyway." That was my send-off. I drove myself to Ann Arbor in a 2003 Honda Civic with a busted air conditioner and one working window. And I told myself that was fine. It was fine, I was used to it. What I wasn't used to is what happened after my grandfather died. My grandfather, my mother's father, was named Earl Hutchins. He was a retired electrician from Cincinnati who drove a truck that was older than I was and made the best chili I have ever tasted in my life. He wasn't wealthy, but he was careful. He'd saved his entire life, slowly, quietly, the way men of his generation did. When he passed away the spring of my junior year at Michigan, he left behind a little over $400,000 in savings, property, and investments. I didn't know what was in his will. No one told me. I found out the way I found out most things in my family. By accident, overhearing a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd driven home for Easter weekend. Maddie and Derek were already there when I arrived. I remember pulling into the driveway and seeing Derek's black Mercedes gleaming in the afternoon sun, like it had something to prove. I came in through the side door, the way I always did, and I could hear my parents and Maddie talking in the kitchen, voices low but not low enough. My mother was saying something about the estate attorney, about how the distribution would be handled. My father said Maddie's name. Then my mother said that the timing couldn't be better because Maddie and Derek were thinking about opening a second dealership location. I stood in the hallway with my overnight bag on my shoulder and I listened. The full inheritance, all of it. Going to Madison, not split, not divided. All of it. My grandfather had left the estate to my mother, and my mother had decided, with my father's full support, to pass it directly to my sister. I stood there for a long time. Then I set my bag down quietly, walked back out the side door, got in my Civic and drove back to Michigan, without saying a single word to anyone. My mother called twice that night. I let it go to voicemail. She said they hadn't expected me until dinner, that she was sorry they missed me, that she'd saved a plate. She did not mention the money. She did not mention my grandfather's estate. She did not mention my name in the same sentence as any of it. I didn't call back. Here is what my family did not know about me, because they had never thought to ask. During my junior and senior year at Michigan, I had been working on a software platform with two friends, a guy named Marcus Webb from Detroit and a woman named Priya Chandrasekaran from Ann Arbor. It wasn't a big idea, it wasn't flashy. It was a logistics coordination tool for mid-sized construction companies, helping them track subcontractor schedules, permit timelines, and material delivery windows in one place. Boring stuff. Invisible stuff. The kind of stuff that nobody talks about at parties, but that every project manager in the country desperately needs. We called it BuildBridge. We launched a beta version 6 weeks before I graduated. By graduation day, we had 11 paying clients. By the following January, we had 40. We were charging $400 a month per account, and the overhead was almost nothing because Marcus had built the whole back end himself in a converted garage in Ypsilanti. I did not tell my parents about BuildBridge. I want you to really sit with that for a second. Not because I was being secretive out of spite. At least not at first. I didn't tell them because I had learned, over the course of my entire life, that telling my parents something good about myself resulted in either silence or a pivot to something good about Madison. I once told my father I'd broken the school record in the 400-metre dash. He said, "That's great, buddy," and then told me Maddie had just been named her company's Employee of the Month. So I stopped sharing. I kept BuildBridge to myself. I let it grow in the dark, like something that didn't need their sunlight to survive. By the time I was 26, BuildBridge had over 300 clients in 19 states. We had hired 8 full-time employees. We had turned down 2 acquisition offers, one from a company in Austin and one from a private equity firm in New York, because Marcus and Priya and I believed we were worth more than what they were offering. We were right. At 28, I sold BuildBridge to a construction technology firm based in Denver for just under $11 million. My share after taxes and the split with Marcus and Priya was a little under $4 million. I put most of it in index funds and a commercial real estate investment trust. I kept enough in cash to live comfortably, to buy a nice condo in Chicago where I'd moved after the sale, and to take Marcus and Priya to dinner at the best restaurant in the city to celebrate. I did not call my parents. My parents, for their part, had not called me much either. We'd settled into this arrangement that I think both sides found easier than the alternative. A couple of texts at Christmas, maybe a call on birthdays that was always stiff and short. My mother would ask if I was eating. My father would ask vaguely about work. I would say things were fine. And that was true. Things were fine. More than fine, actually. But they didn't ask in a way that made me feel like they actually wanted to know. Madison, from what I gathered, was thriving. The second dealership had opened. They'd had a baby, a girl named Olivia, whom I had never met. My parents babysat Olivia twice a week. My mother had taken to posting photos of Olivia on Facebook with long captions about how she was the light of their lives. I was not mentioned in these captions. I'm not telling you all of this so you'll hate my family. I want to be fair. My parents were not evil people. They were small people. Small in the way that small towns can make you small. In their vision, in their assumptions, in their understanding of what a life could look like. They had decided early on that Madison was the star, and they had organised their entire world around that decision. And the older they got, the more that decision hardened into fact in their minds, and the more difficult it became for them to see anything that contradicted it. They had written a story about our family, and I was a background character in it, a minor one. The dinner in March, the dinner I mentioned at the very beginning, was my cousin Tyler's wedding rehearsal dinner. Tyler is my mother's nephew, and he'd specifically asked that the whole extended family be there, including me. Tyler is a good man. He's one of the few people in my family who ever treated me like I mattered. He'd called me personally and asked me to come, and I could hear in his voice that he genuinely wanted me there. So I drove down from Chicago on a Friday afternoon and checked into the Holiday Inn on Main Street and put on a nice blazer and showed up to the private dining room at this Italian restaurant called Carmine's that Tyler had reserved for the rehearsal dinner. I was the last one to arrive. The room went quiet for about 2 seconds when I walked in, the kind of quiet that tells you people were just talking about something they don't want you to hear. Then my mother smiled her librarian smile and said, "Ryan, you made it," in that tone that meant she was surprised. Madison was sitting at the main table in a red dress. She looked good. She always looked good. Derek was next to her in a sport coat. his tan deep enough that I assumed they'd recently been somewhere warm. My mother moved to hug me, and I let her, and she smelled like coffee, same as always. My father shook my hand. "Good to see you, son." He said it the way you say, "Have a nice day" to someone you'll never see again. I found a seat near Tyler and his fiancée, a warm, funny woman named Grace. And for the first hour, everything was fine. The food was good. The wine was good. Tyler told a story about the first time he'd met Grace's father, and everyone laughed. Then came the moment. Derek had had a couple glasses of wine. Derek was the kind of man who became about 40% louder after 2 glasses of wine, which made him approximately as loud as a commercial aircraft. He was telling a story to the table about a deal he'd just closed, some property investment that had done well, and my Uncle Paul asked, "What about you, Ryan? You still doing that computer thing?" I said yes, I was doing well in tech. Derek laughed. Not a mean laugh, exactly, but the laugh of a man who has decided you are not worth taking seriously. "Computer thing," he repeated, like it was cute. "What is it? Like an app or something?" "More of a B2B software platform," I said. "I sold it a couple years back." "Oh, yeah. What kind of money does something like that go for?" He asked it the way people ask things they expect small answers to. The table was quiet. I could feel my mother watching me with that careful expression she got when she was trying to manage a situation before it became one. "Enough," I said. Derek grinned. "Come on, ballpark it. 6 figures. Good for you, man. That's solid." "More than 6, I said. 7. He raised his eyebrows. He still had that smile, the one that said he was humouring me. "Upper end of 7, yeah," I said, and I picked up my wine glass and took a sip. The smile didn't disappear. It sort of froze, like someone had paused the video. He looked at Madison, then at my father, then back at me. My mother said quietly, "Ryan, 4 million after taxes," I said, "give or take." The table was not quiet anymore. It was a different kind of not quiet. The kind where everyone is making sounds, but nobody is actually speaking. My father stared at me. I'd never seen that particular look on his face before. It wasn't anger. It was something more unsettling. It was the look of a man who is rapidly recalculating something and does not like the new answer. Madison turned to me slowly, and for the first time in my memory she looked at me. Really looked at me. Like I was a real person. Like I was someone she didn't fully know. Which was accurate. Tyler started laughing. Not a mean laugh. A delighted one. He reached over and clapped me on the shoulder and said, "That's my cousin," and I felt something in my chest loosen a little. The dinner ended without incident. People hugged Tyler. The party broke up. I said goodnight and walked to my car. My mother caught me in the parking lot. She was walking fast for a woman in heels, her breath fogging a little in the March air. Ryan, wait." I stopped. She reached me and stood there for a second, catching her breath. In the parking lot light, she looked older than I expected. She looked tired. "Why didn't you tell us?" she said. I looked at her for a long moment. "Tell you what, Mum? About the company, about the money, about all of it." She gestured vaguely at me, at the air around me, at $4 million worth of silence between us. "You let us think." "I let you think what you already thought," I said. "I didn't do anything." She looked like I'd said something sharp to her, which I supposed I had. "That's not fair," she said. I thought about a lot of things in that moment. I thought about track meets and voicemails and Easter weekends and my grandfather's $400,000, and every dinner table conversation where Maddie's name came up 14 times and mine came up 0. I thought about the Honda Civic and the broken air conditioner, and my mother's voice saying that it worked out, that I'd won a full scholarship because they were out of money anyway. "You're right," I said. "It's not fair." I got in my car and drove back to the hotel. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognise. It was an attorney. His name was Philip Greer, and he had been the estate attorney who handled my grandfather Earl Hutchins's will. He apologised for the unusual hour of contact, explaining that he'd gotten my number from Tyler, who had mentioned I was in town. He said he had been trying to reach me for about 8 months, and that my family had not been forthcoming with my contact information. He said there was a clause in my grandfather's will that had not been shared with me. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and I said, "Tell me." Mr. Greer explained that my grandfather had not, in fact, left his estate entirely to my mother with open discretion for distribution. There was a specific provision, a handwritten addendum, legally witnessed and attached to the primary document, specifying that in the event the estate was redistributed among grandchildren, it was to be divided equally. My grandfather had written it himself, in his careful, looping handwriting. On a yellow legal pad, he'd signed it. 2 neighbours had witnessed it. It was unambiguous and it was binding. My mother had never mentioned this provision to me. Neither had the attorney she'd consulted when handling the estate. An attorney my father had recommended, a man who played golf with my father on alternating Sundays. "How long ago was the estate distributed?" I asked. 14 months, said Mr. Greer. "And Madison received the full amount?" "That is correct. The full estate, approximately $412,000, was transferred to your sister 11 months ago." I was quiet for a moment. Outside the hotel window, Dayton was waking up slowly in the grey March light. A delivery truck was pulling out of the parking lot. A woman was walking a retriever on a leash. "What are my options?" I asked. "You have legal standing to file a claim," Mr. Greer said. "The provision is clear. Your share, under the Equal Distribution Clause, would be approximately $206,000. You could pursue this through the probate court, or—" He paused. "Your family could simply make it right voluntarily." "Which do you think is more likely?" I said. He was quiet for 1 second. "I've been doing estate law for 31 years, he said. "I think you should file." I told him I'd call him back. I sat on that hotel bed for a long time. I thought about whether I needed the money. I didn't. Not really, not in any way that would change my daily life. I thought about whether I wanted to do this to my family, to bring an attorney and a courtroom and a legal judgment into what was already a wreckage of a relationship. And then I thought about my grandfather. I thought about Earl Hutchins, who drove an old truck and made good chili, and who had spent his whole life saving quietly, carefully, without flash or performance, so that someday the people he loved would have a little more security than he had. I thought about him sitting at his kitchen table, writing that addendum in his careful handwriting, making absolutely sure that what he'd built would be shared fairly. He had thought of me. Even when almost no one else did, he had thought of me. He had written my name into the protection of that document, and the people who were supposed to love me had erased it. I called Mr. Greer back. "File," I said. What happened over the next 4 months is both simple and not simple. My mother called me 11 times in the first week, after she was served with the legal notice. My father called 3 times. Madison called once, and the call lasted 40 seconds, and the only word I clearly remember her saying is, "Seriously." I did not answer any of these calls. I had asked Mr. Greer to be the point of contact, and I let him handle everything through proper channels. My parents consulted their own attorney. Their attorney, after reviewing the addendum and the witness signatures and the language of the original will, apparently told them what Mr. Greer had already told me, that the clause was valid and that fighting it in court would cost more in legal fees than it was worth, and that they would lose. They agreed to pay. The settlement was finalised on a Tuesday morning in July, $206,412, transferred to an account I provided. I donated $50,000 of it to the University of Michigan Scholarship Fund for first-generation college students. I put the rest into the same index fund account I'd had since I was 23. I sent my parents a letter after the transfer cleared. Not a hateful letter. Not a letter full of everything I'd wanted to say for 30 years. Just a short letter, 2 paragraphs, that said I hoped they were well, that I hoped they understood why I had to do what I did, and that I was choosing to step back from the relationship for a while, to take care of myself. I said I wished them no harm. I meant it. I don't know if they cried. I don't know if they were angry. I don't know if they sat at that kitchen table in Dayton and looked at each other and finally said the things out loud that had been circling the house for 30 years. I hope they did, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because people who face the truth, really face it, sometimes have a chance to change. And I'd spent too long being angry to also stay hopeful, So I chose to put the hope down for a while and just breathe. Tyler called me on the night the settlement cleared. I heard, he said. Yeah, I said. You okay? I thought about that. I was sitting in my condo in Chicago with a cup of coffee, watching the lake from my window. The water was that particular deep blue it gets in late summer. There were sailboats out. I think so, I said. I think I'm getting there. For what it's worth, Tyler said, your grandfather would have been proud of you, not because of the money. Just, he would have been proud. I didn't say anything for a second because I didn't trust my voice. He used to talk about you, Tyler said, at family things when you weren't around. He'd bring you up, ask how you were doing. He thought you were something special. He told me I was fast, I said, and I laughed a little, because that's what Earl Hutchins had said to me once when I was maybe 13, and had shown him a ribbon I'd won at a track meet. He'd held it in his thick-fingered hands and said simply, "You're fast, Ryan. That's a good thing to be." Like it was wisdom, like speed was a virtue he admired deeply. Maybe he was right. I've thought a lot since all of this about what the word inheritance actually means. The legal version, money, property, stuff, that's the smallest part of it. What you actually inherit from a family is the story they tell about you. And for a long time, the story my family told about me was that I was the background character, the afterthought, the one who didn't need as much because he didn't shine as bright. The thing about growing up like that is it teaches you something that families like Madison's never quite learn. It teaches you that you have to build it yourself. You have to find your own light source. You have to become slowly and stubbornly, and without applause, the person you needed when you were a kid, who ran track alone and studied in the library because it was the only quiet room in the house. I built that. I built it the way my grandfather saved money. Slowly, carefully, without flash. And the thing no one in my family ever understood, the thing that still sometimes catches in my chest when I think about it, is that I never needed their validation to do it. I just needed them to stay out of my way. They didn't always manage that, but in the end it didn't matter. I still turned out fast.